Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Senior Vice President of Amazon Web Services, Andy Jassy.
Welcome to the 4th annual AWS reInvent. It is awesome to be here. This is our favorite week of the year, and we're really excited that you chose to spend a few days with us. We have 19,000 of you here for the conference. I understand that we have 38,000 people on the live stream right now. Welcome, everybody. And a few words about the conference, which I say every year when I start, which is, this is not the typical technology conference. It's not intended to be a sales and marketing conference. It's really intended to be an education conference. And it's an opportunity for you to learn more about the cloud, learn more about AWS, learn more from your peers about how they're using AWS and what's working and what to watch out for. And it's why we have 278 breakout sessions for you outside of the keynotes. And about half of them include a customer or partner participating, and about a third of them are led by customers or partners, which our customers have told us have been most valuable. So we have a lot to cover, so let's giddy up. A year ago on this stage, I shared what we'd been learning over the last year or year and a half, which is that the cloud has become the new normal. And it's become the new normal for companies of all sizes to deploy their new applications by default, and as many existing companies moving their existing applications as fast as possible to the cloud. And I think that you've seen that borne out in the AWS results, which I'll go over a few of them for you right now. So we have over 1 million active customers at this point, and we count an active customer as a non-Amazon entity that's used the platform in the last 30 days. This is our compute service, Amazon EC2, and you can see on an already very large base, if you look at the instance hours used year over year, it's grown 95%. And the same is true of our storage service, our object store, Amazon S3, where again, on a very large base, the number of data transferred in and out of S3 has increased 120% year over year. And also true in our database services. So if you look at our relational database service, our non-relational database service, DynamoDB, our caching service, and our data warehouse service, and you look at the usage of those, that's also increased substantially, 127% year over year. And our database business is now a $1 billion plus revenue run rate business. So very significant growth. This is a slide that shows the revenue run rate in successive quarters. So this isn't year over year, this is successive quarters. So you can see very dramatic growth. And in the last quarter that we reported, Q2 of this year, you can see that on a trailing 12 months basis, AWS has a $7.3 billion revenue run rate, growing 81% year over year. So very fast growth. If you look at the respective growth rates of the multi-billion-dollar enterprise IT companies, it's pretty interesting. You can see that there are some companies that are contracting, and you can see, for instance, IBM shrinking by double digits, or Oracle and Microsoft shrinking by single digits. Most of the companies are growing in the low single digits, but you can see AWS at 81% year-over-year growth, by far the fastest growing multi-billion-dollar enterprise technology company in the world. And you can also see it borne out in the very diverse and broad and large customer base. So many of the most successful startups have been using AWS for a long time. They range from Pinterest and Airbnb and Stripe and Slack and Periscope and AdRoll and Tinder. And global enterprises in every imaginable vertical business segment. In oil and gas, you see Hess and BP and Shell. In financial services, FINRA and Intuit, and the Commonwealth Bank of Australia and Suncorp. In healthcare, you see Johnson & Johnson and Merck and Pfizer and Bristol Myers Squibb. In manufacturing, GE and Philips and Schneider Electric. In technology, Netflix and Samsung and Adobe. In media, News Corp and Condé Nast and Dow Jones. Just every imaginable vertical business segment is using AWS in a very meaningful way. And we've also built a very substantial public sector business where we have about 2,000 government agencies worldwide using AWS, about 5,000 academic institutions, and about 18,000 nonprofit organizations. From the very start of AWS, our partner ecosystem has been very strategic to us. And that's because we knew when our customers were going to make a shift, and the cloud is the biggest transformation in technology in our lifetimes, that our customers would want to make that shift with systems integrators that can help them figure out how to move to the cloud the right way, and using the same software they've always used just on top of AWS's technology infrastructure platform. And so we have thousands of systems integrators that have built practices on AWS, and they range from some of the largest like Accenture and Booz Allen and Cognizant and Infosys and Wipro to some of the born in the cloud or reborn in the cloud SIs like Bulletproof in Australia or CloudReach in the UK or Dataluz in Brazil or Slalom or InfoReliance and Smartronix in the public sector. And you've seen the same thing in the ISV community. You have some SaaS providers who've built all in from the cloud right from the get-go on top of AWS, like Acquia. But you also see a large number of ISVs that have adapted their software to run on top of AWS. Companies like Adobe and Autodesk and Atlassian and Esri and Infor and Informatica, Oracle and Pega and SAP and Splunk. Just the largest collection of systems integrators and ISVs of any ecosystem you'll find anywhere. Very important to our business. And then, over the last 3 years, we've built a marketplace that allows our ISV partners to distribute their software and have our customers find it, and they package it such that it runs almost in one click when customers want to deploy it. So it's much easier for our customers to use our partner software. And we have, at this point, over 800 ISVs, over 2,300 listings, and 35 categories. And just to give you an idea of the growth here, if you look at all of the software from our marketplace that's been run on EC2 in the last month, it comprises 143 million hours of EC2, up 120% year over year. So our marketplace is just continuing to grow really quickly as well. So why are companies flocking so quickly to the cloud? We get asked this all the time, and there's 6 reasons that we usually tell people we hear most frequently. The first is, if you can turn capital expense to a variable expense, it's usually very attractive for companies. And then, that variable expense is less than what companies pay on their own because AWS is such large scale that we pass on to our customers in the form of lower prices. You don't have to guess how much capacity you're going to need. When your demand dictates, you scale up seamlessly, and then when you're no longer at your peak, you give that capacity back to us and stop paying for it, so you get real elasticity. The fourth reason is probably the one that people most frequently cite for why they come to the cloud, which is just incredible agility. Instead of having to wait 10 to 18 weeks for a server, you get to move much more quickly. You can spin up thousands of instances or servers in minutes. You get to take that scarce resource who are your software development engineers, and instead of having them work on the undifferentiated heavy lifting of infrastructure, they get to work on what differentiates your business. And then you get to deploy your application in worldwide infrastructure so that you have lower latency and a better customer experience for your customers, and you get data sovereignty where you need it. So those are the reasons that we see people most frequently cite that they're moving to the cloud. But it doesn't really explain why people are so excited and so passionate about the cloud. And when you talk to developers and development managers and line of business managers and now CIOs, what they'll tell you is it's very much about freedom and controlling your own destiny. Prior to the cloud, for lots of years, builders were constrained. And if they had a new idea that they wanted to propose, the answer they most frequently got was, no, we don't support that, or I don't think so, or maybe next year. Or if you work at a company that uses a managed services provider, you'd get the dreaded, that's going to be a change order, which meant it was going to be a lot of money, it was going to take a lot of time, and it wasn't going to happen. This is very demoralizing, And it doesn't encourage builders to spend their free cycles thinking about innovation and how to change your business. Now, developers didn't get into computer science to do the same thing over and over every day. They're builders. They're tinkerers. They're creators. And a lot of the best ideas are locked inside of builders' heads, just ready to be unleashed if the right infrastructure and supporting infrastructure services were available to them. And the same is true for CIOs. CIOs have to make sure that their companies use infrastructure in a secure and orderly fashion. But they didn't take that job to do the same thing over and over again. And they didn't take that job to move slowly, and they sure don't like telling their builders no on a consistent basis when their builders have ideas on how they can really change that business. This cloud and AWS movement are very much about giving builders freedom and control over their own destiny. It's about giving them hope that if they come up with an idea either individually or as a group that could really change their business, that they could go make it happen. This is why people are so passionate about the cloud. This is why the cloud is growing so quickly. And once builders get a taste of this, there's no way they're going back to the old way of doing things. So if the cloud provides these basic freedoms, what are the basic freedoms it provides? And we'll give you what we think are 7 of them today. The first basic freedom is the freedom to build unfettered. It is really difficult in this day and age to compete if you're not able to be agile and move fast. The cloud has made that so. And you can just look at what startups have done in lots of long-standing businesses where from a standing start, they've totally disrupted that industry. And so AWS not only lets you move fast, but it also removes many of the normal barriers and blockers that builders face. The 2 keys to agility are, number 1, being able to provision fast. And as we talked about in the cloud, you can provision thousands of servers in minutes. But also, at least as importantly, it's having a very broad, robust technology infrastructure platform at your fingertips so you don't have to reinvent all those infrastructure services to get your idea to market. And if you look at the AWS technology infrastructure platform, it has a lot more functionality by a large amount than any other infrastructure provider. And I won't go through all of these boxes, but I'll just give you the broad strokes. We have 11 regions located throughout the world. And a region is a place where we have multiple data centers and clusters of data centers that we call availability zones. Now, we do regions differently than other infrastructure providers. We don't launch a region with one data center and say, here's a region. Because we've learned over the last 9.5 years that any customer that's serious about their applications and care about them want to deploy them across multiple data centers for fault tolerance. So we have 11 regions with 2 more announced coming next year. We have 30 availability zones, and many of those availability zones comprise of multiple data centers, so we have a lot of data centers, and about 50 points of presence for our content distribution network. Now, we also have a series of core building blocks. We have a compute service with many flavors of compute. We have many storage services, an object store, a block store, an archival and backup store. We have 5 different database engines for our relational database service, soon to be a 6th. We have a non-relational database service. We have a content distribution network. And then we have all kinds of networking features you can layer on top of those core building blocks. And then we have a number of analytics capabilities. We have batch analytics and streaming analytics and a data warehouse, lots of mobile services, whether it's identity and sync and analytics and mobile push and an API gateway. We have a number of deployment options for you. You can deploy via containers, you can deploy via templates, you can deploy via a GUI, you can use our event-driven computing service, Lambda. We have a number of app services, search and notifications and queuing and transcoding. We have a number of enterprise solutions a little bit further up the stack that we've built over the last number of years. We have a virtual desktop in the cloud called Workspaces, enterprise storage and collaboration called WorkDocs, secure and hosted email called WorkMail. Then we have, as I mentioned, a marketplace where you can use a lot of our ISV provider services on top of the platform. A number of hybrid capabilities for our customers that want to run their existing databases seamlessly alongside AWS, and then a number of people services that you have asked us to provide over the last few years. So apart from account management, we have premium support where you get a one-on-one technical account manager that knows your environment very well. We have solutions architects, we have professional services, and we have a lot of training and certification. So a very robust, fully featured technology infrastructure platform. But it's not just that we have a lot more services than every other provider, it's also that we have a lot more features within those services than every other provider. So let me give you a few examples. In our compute service, while we have a standard compute family like a lot of folks do, we also have a CPU optimized family, a memory optimized family, a storage optimized family, an IO optimized family, a GPU optimized family, and then you can run dedicated instances across these families if you want to be sure you're the only company on a box. No other provider has more than half of these. Or you can look at our database space. Look at our relational database service where we have MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, SQL Server, and our new database engine we announced at reInvent last year, Aurora. We have 5 database engines, plus the ability to run for high availability and multi-AZs and use read replicas for performance. No other provider has more than one of those database engines, and none of them have multi-AZ or read replicas. Or look at encryption. We have 3 ways you can encrypt your data. You can either do it server-side with services like S3. If you want to store the keys yourself in hardware security modules, we have a service called Cloud HSM that lets you do that. Or you can use our key management service, which allows you to do one-click creation of keys and then a simple way to rotate them. We also integrate the key management across these different services, and then we have a way for you to audit all of the access and actions with your keys in CloudTrail, which is our API logging service. No other provider has more than one of these. Or look at access control, if you care about who can access your resources. We have very fine-grained identity and access management, where you can set identities by the individual, by the location, time-based identities, which API calls they're going to make. And so it means that you can, with AWS, say, Steve from the Seattle headquarters can create RDS instances between business hours 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. No other provider can do anything more in that same situation than say a DBA can make any call and impact RDS from anywhere at any time. Very different capabilities. We also have the ability to do easy key rotation. We have the ability to allow you to have temporary credentials for short-lived credentials you want to issue, and then the ability to test any of these policies across your environment. And no other provider has more than half of these capabilities as well. It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage the CIO of Capital One, Rob Alexander.
All right, well, thanks, Andy. I'm excited to join you and represent Capital One as part of this year's reInvent conference. Most of you know Capital One as a credit card company. We're one of the largest in the United States with over 70 million accounts. Many know we're also one of the nation's largest banks. Fewer, however, realize that we're also a founder-led, 20-year-old technology company and the nation's largest digital bank. Digital is truly the new bank branch. And what's especially striking is the degree to which mobile has become the preferred channel for our customers. Mobile usage is now twice that of web, and mobile is moving away fast. It's clear in our business, we really need to be great at building amazing digital experiences for our customers. We have to be great at building software and data products if we're going to win where banking is going. So at Capital One, we have to model ourselves on the best technology companies out there. We are investing massively to hire great engineering talent at Capital One. We have an open source first philosophy for how we build our software at Capital One, and we contribute back to the open source community. We're a 100% agile shop, and we employ DevOps in order to speed our software delivery. All of our development is done in a REST API microservices-based architecture, and we leverage big and fast data technologies in all of the solutions that we build. Over the last couple of years, Amazon Web Services has moved to play a more important role in our technology strategy at Capital One. Like many large enterprises, we started more in an experimentation mode. In our innovation labs, some of our development teams, it was really a grassroots, developer-driven usage of the platform. But at Capital One, we listen to our developers. And so we've expanded our use of AWS for development and test more broadly. And this year, we've taken a more aggressive stance, recognizing that we can deploy some of our most critical production workloads on the AWS platform. This is a game changer for Capital One. We recognize that we want to be in the business of building great applications for our customers, not in investing to build costly and complex infrastructure. As a consequence, we're focused on consolidating and rationalizing our data center footprint. Our use of AWS is enabling us to reduce our data center count from 8 in 2014 to 5 by the end of 2016 and down to 3 we project by the end of 2018. So why did we pick AWS for Capital One? First of all, we have thousands of developers building software at Capital One. The ability to provision infrastructure on the fly is huge for our productivity and our speed to market. Elasticity is important to us. Think credit card purchase volume on Black Friday or Cyber Monday. We need to be able to expand dynamically for that demand. And of course, security is critical for us. The financial services industry attracts some of the worst cyber criminals. So we work closely with the Amazon team to develop a security model which we believe enables us to operate more securely in the public cloud than we can even in our own data centers. We engineer and design our apps for high availability, and the multiple layers of resiliency that AWS offers supports that. And of course, the pace of innovation on the platform, the introduction of new services and capabilities, that's a huge draw for our team. We're either using or experimenting with nearly every AWS service. And the introduction of services for large enterprises has been especially helpful to us. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, our use of AWS is a great draw for talent. You know, the principal reason I'm standing here today is because we have thousands of open roles we need to fill at Capital One, and we want to attract great engineering talent to come work in our organization and join us on the mission that we're on. So now I'd like to make our story a bit more tangible. I want to show you an example of how we're leveraging AWS for one of our most critical applications. I'm guessing that most of you out here in this audience have a mobile banking app on your smartphone. Well, we've just launched a new flagship mobile banking app for Capital One. It's available today in the App Store for the iPhone, and it will shortly be available for Android and on the iPad. We're deploying this app on AWS across the East and West regions for reliability and also to optimize performance. And we have either deployed or in the process of migrating our API gateway, API orchestration, some 80 services, and that number is growing fast. We're really excited about this app. It's the product of some amazing design thinking work by our team, and it incorporates some really cool features and functionality. I'd like to show you a brief video demo of our new mobile banking app.
Using modern technologies and human-centered design, we're introducing customers to the next generation of digital banking at Capital One. We greet you with a personalized message, and based on your behavior and your preferences, we show you the most important information. Need to pay a bill? We'll remind you. Something new on your credit report? We'll let you know. We also give you the chance to make the experience yours. Upload a profile picture, customize your layout, and make your accounts feel personal. All of these changes will automatically update online and on your phone or tablet. We brought your most frequent tasks up front and made them easy to complete. Want to understand your spending better? We let you view your recent transactions in an easy-to-understand way. What did you spend on your car last month? We'll help you out. Best of all, the iPhone app is available now in the App Store, with iPad and Android launching this fall.
All right, well, that's a cool app. Well, thanks very much for listening to our little story here. And the next time you pull out your phone, I want you to remember, ask yourself, what's in your wallet? Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. It is really a privilege for us to be collaborating and partnering with Capital One. It's an amazing company, and we've learned a lot already. So the cloud gives you newfound ability to get from idea to market faster than ever. But what AWS and the cloud also give you is the freedom to get the real value from your mounds of data. For many years, before the cloud, companies didn't keep the amount of data they wanted to keep because it was cost prohibitive to do so. And you would often have to go to your CFO and say, I need the resources to answer these one or two questions. And very often, those wouldn't be the key questions to answer, and you wouldn't get any real data. And of course, your data has all of the gems in it if you have the ability to keep it and to mine it. With the cloud, it has never been easier and less expensive to collect, store, analyze, and share data than today. And a lot of that has to do with the services that AWS has provided for customers over the last number of years. So we have a very large object store in S3. We have a number of high-performance databases. We have the ability for customers to do analytics in either Hadoop or Spark in our Elastic MapReduce service. We just launched last week a managed Elasticsearch service. We had many thousands of customers who are running Elasticsearch on EC2 that wanted us to make it easier. And so presto, we provided that last week. We have a streaming data analytics platform called Kinesis. We launched a machine learning service earlier this year. And then, of course, we have a data warehouse service called Amazon Redshift, which has been the fastest growing service in the history of AWS over the last couple of years. And it's part of why you see so many companies who are doing large-scale analytics on top of AWS and in the cloud. So just a few examples. NTT Docomo is running their 4-petabyte data warehouse on top of Amazon Redshift. Or Viveki, which is the large media company and advertising company. They run all kinds of analysis on campaigns to optimize the ROI. And they're running the same amount of data that they were running when they were doing it on premises, now on AWS, but at a 75% less operating cost. And those same analyses that used to take 20 days are taking them 6 hours. That's a big difference. Or you can look at Philips, and Philips is trying to reinvent healthcare for billions of people, and they built their Philips Health Suite application on top of AWS. And if you look at what they're doing, they're comparing diagnoses of patients all over the world, and they're streaming the vitals of 19 million patients all over the world and doing analytics on top of that. They're already storing and doing analysis on 15 petabytes of data, growing a petabyte a month. So these are big, large-scale analytics that are being done on top of the cloud in AWS right now. And yet, if you think about the number of people inside your companies that are really able to do analytics, is typically a relatively small amount. It's usually the more technical people who can get at these analytics services. And we just got done earlier talking about how builders want the freedom to control their own destiny. Well, non-technical builders also want to be able to understand what's going on with the data and get those insights and turn those into actions. And I can tell you that the technical people want the business people to actually be able to do that. So it takes away some of the ticket load that they have. And today, it's pretty difficult to do. The business intelligence tools of the old guard and the days of yesteryear, they're hard to use. I mean, this is an example of the UI of one of them. It's a product that rhymes with the word hognos. And it is, it's rather janky. It's kind of hard to use, and it's kind of hard to manipulate. Or You have other old guard BI tools where it's very complicated. You have put together 15 to 18 different components until you can get to a real product, and then it's very expensive. It's $150 to $250 per user per month with a 3-year commit often, and you also have to pay maintenance on top of that. And so customers look at this and they say, well, look, we want more of our builders to be able to understand what's going on with the data, but we want it to be faster, and we want it to be less expensive, and we want the UI to be much easier to manipulate. And so I'm excited to announce the launch of Amazon QuickSight, which is a very fast, easy-to-use, cloud-powered business intelligence service, which is available in preview today. What the service allows you to do is usually when you actually want to get your first visualization and insight from a product, it takes several weeks, sometimes months of an engineer doing data modeling. This is very different what QuickSight does. As soon as we recognize an AWS customer, we take all their data that's stored in the various AWS data stores, because so many of our customers are storing data with AWS, and we move it to our query engine so that you can get your first visualization within 60 seconds. And then we built what we consider a pretty revolutionary, very innovative, super fast, parallel, in-memory calculation engine, which we call SPICE, that our customers will be able to enjoy much faster query response times than they're used to enjoying. And we also believe that our BI partners will be able to use for their own BI tools to increase the query time for their customers. We also have very beautiful and attractive visualizations that you'll have at your disposal. You have the ability to capture graphs or tables or stories and share them with either internal employees or external folks if that's what you want to do. The service integrates with all of AWS's data stores, which is important for our customers, and we're offering it at 1/10 of the cost of the traditional business intelligence providers. To give you a demo of what QuickSight looks like and to show you a little bit more about it, it is my privilege to introduce to the stage the one and only Dr. Matt Wood.
Thank you, Andy. Good morning, everybody. It's my privilege to talk to you a little bit more about Amazon QuickSight, a lightning-fast business intelligence service which aims to bring the power of analytics to you and everybody inside your organization. So as we were building out Amazon QuickSight, we knew we had to make it as easy as possible for customers to be able to work with the large data that they have already stored on AWS. And we focused on that in really 3 ways. The first was we wanted to make the service as easy as possible to use. And what that entails is the ability to be able to look inside the data sources that are already available in your account on AWS. So Amazon QuickSight will go and with the right permissions take a look at data inside Redshift, Amazon RDS, DynamoDB, data that you have stored in Hadoop, in Elastic MapReduce, even flat files that you have stored in Amazon S3. Then we take a look at not just the sources of that data, but we start to inspect the data types inside that data and look for the relationships between those data types. And what this allows us to do is build up a lot of information and intelligence about the types of data that you're working with. And that allows us to select the best visualization for your data automatically using a technology that we call Autograph. And not only does Autograph make recommendations, we're also just using the tools and the data and the information that we've inferred, we'll make recommendations of not just the types of graphs are the best way to display your data, but the types of variables and data that you want to plot against each other to try and extract that visualization and analysis. The second area that we knew we needed to focus on was allow customers to analyze data as quickly as possible. And to do this, we created a custom data layer, which is the super fast, parallel, in-memory computation engine, or something that we call SPICE. And what SPICE allows us to do is to collect and compress data in a columnar way and optimize it for in-memory use. Then we take queries and analytic questions that you want to run against that data. We compile them down. We automatically create the machine code, and we run them against that compressed data. And that allows us to do rich, multi-pass calculations against the data that is stored in Spice. These happen extremely quickly because of these three things of compression, compiled code, which goes down to machine code, and then multi-pass calculations. Spice is also designed to be as extensible as possible, both for us to expand its capabilities over time, but also to allow partners to plug into it over time as well. So you can access Spice using the Amazon QuickSight user interface, but also partners such as Domo, Qlik, Tableau, and TIBCO Jaspersoft can plug directly into Spice and access and run the same queries against your data on AWS. The third area that we needed to focus on was to make it as easy as possible to tell data-driven stories with your colleagues. So what Amazon QuickSight allows you to do is to build and share and collaborate around real live analyses. You can look at these analyses inside the tool. You can also embed them on web pages, on the intranet, on public web pages. You can even embed them inside your application. You can use exactly the same tools to build out live dashboards, so you can collect and aggregate different types of data and different analyses and look at those in real time up on the dashboard. And you can even do all of that on the go with mobile apps, native mobile apps for iOS and Android. So with that, I'd like to ask John to bring up the demo. So what you're looking at here is your first look at Amazon QuickSight. And this is the home page. Here we can see some analyses that we've previously done. And you can see all the different types and graphs that are available to us in QuickSight. You can see pie charts and histograms and scatter plots, even heat maps and pivot tables. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill into some retail sales data. And we're going to see what information and discoveries we can make based on that data. So here over on the left-hand side of Amazon QuickSight, you can see all the different data types that are available to us. And the service itself has gone on and extracted those from the data sources along with the relationships between those data types. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner, Autograph automatically recommending the types of visualizations and analyses that we might want to run first. This is really helpful if you're coming to a fresh data set without too much context. And then we can switch tabs and start to look at some of the other data types and visualizations that are available to us. Pie charts, tree maps, and again, bar charts. So this is retail data. You can see just how fast this analysis is. This is running against tens of millions of records of retail data. And you can see here broken out by category, the number of sales. So the longer the line, the more of a particular product we've sold. And you can see fitness here and computers and outdoor equipment. And you can see that John's able to just mouse over and get a summary of that information. So now let's start to dive into this data and see what intelligence we can gather from it. Directly from the visual, without having to write any SQL or any programming, we can start to slice and dice this data. So what we can do is we can focus on just the information that we're interested in this case, our top-selling category, fitness. Then we can start to segment this out. So we can look at not just the category, but we can start to refine that query and drill into it, looking at the subcategories. So here you can see the weight accessories and turnstiles and monitors that people are buying in the fitness category. Again, we can mouse over, and we can start to drill into this in a bit more detail. So let's add another dimension. This is aggregated sales information, but it's likely that we might be interested in looking at the trends of how these things are selling. So what we can do is we can take a look at these orders over time. And just with a single click, Autograph has changed the graph type into a line chart, and here you can see the annual sales for each of these product categories. Extremely easy and extremely automatic. So this gives us an idea of the trends, but let's start to really drill in. So let's get a little bit more granular and move not from just looking at this year by year, but looking at this month by month. So again, directly inside the visual, without any real knowledge of writing the code, we can start to drill into and start to visualize that data in more detail. So here you can see the trends that you might expect to see. We can see a peak around the holiday season as people are buying presents for each other. But over here on the right-hand side, there's a peak that maybe we didn't expect. And so we can take a quick hover over that, and we can see that we had a spike in yoga accessory sales. So let's dive into this and see if we can figure out what the cause of that sale was. We can focus in on just that one piece of data. We can remove all the extraneous information, so we can just focus on that one piece of information that we're interested in. We can restrict that query, not just looking at all of the information, but starting to zoom in on just the year by just adding a filter, just a single click. And then we can add granularity to that information, again, directly from the visual, not looking month by month, but looking week by week. And now that spike that we saw earlier is becoming really, really clear. We had a great week in the middle of April for yoga accessories. So let's see if we can find the root cause for this. Now we can start to overlay additional information and look at this same data through the lens of marketing promotions. So our question is really, did the marketing promotions we ran have any impact on sales? An age-old question. So as we start to add in the promotion data, you can start to see that, yes, the sales that have been attributed to the marketing promotion that we ran around spring fitness. And so we can see here that from a standing start, in probably less than about 90 seconds, we've gone from the data, we've sliced and diced it, we've segmented it, and we've started to drive real intelligence that are going to be really useful to our business. In fact, I think that this is going to be so useful that I probably want to be able to share it around my organization. So we built in these sharing capabilities directly inside Amazon QuickSight. So with a single click, we can go ahead and we can capture not just a snapshot of the data, but the live data that this is running against, and we can put that into a storyboard. And that storyboard allows us to build an interactive document which tells a data-driven story in much the same way as I've been able to do with you here today. And I can share this with my colleagues internally. I can have them interact with, change the axes, query the data, and then tell the same story with the data to get the same results. So you can see here, Spring Fitness again. And again, these are not snapshots. These are interactive queries which we could go ahead and embed on our intranet, inside our applications, or even publish onto the public website. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. I can't wait to see what you all do with Amazon QuickSight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. I'm very excited to see what our customers and our partners are going to do with QuickSight. So we've talked about the fact that the cloud allows you to build more quickly and in an unfettered way. And we've also talked about the fact that the cloud gives you the freedom to make sense of all of your data. And as customers have gotten really excited about these benefits, what they've also asked is, well, how can I get my data more easily into the cloud? And that's very much what this third freedom is about, is the freedom to get your data into or out of the cloud easily. And if you think about how people have been able to get their data into the cloud today, from the very start of AWS, you could do it via direct upload, via the internet. And then a few years ago, we built a capability called Direct Connect that's a private connection between your data center and AWS that we have many thousands of customers using today and very successfully. But these solutions don't work for all of the use cases, particularly some of the emerging use cases over the last year or so in what people want to move to the cloud. So take streaming as an example. There are millions of devices in our homes, in the workplace, in even places like oil fields everywhere, and they are continually transmitting data, sometimes many terabytes per hour. And this is actually pretty difficult to handle if you don't have a different way of ingesting that data. And it's part of why a couple years ago at reInvent, we announced a service called Amazon Kinesis, which we now call Kinesis Streams, which is really a platform to allow customers to do processing of real-time streaming data. And customers have used it very broadly. They've built all kinds of really interesting custom applications on top of it. It works with Spark Streaming and Apache Storm. And yet, the most simple use case that a lot of our customers want to employ is they just want to take all that data coming from their sensor or device and just ingest it and store it safely in AWS. And to do so with Kinesis Streams, you have to write a custom application, which takes some time and more effort than a lot of people want. And so we thought a lot about this, and we decided to build a service to make that much easier. So I'm excited to announce today Amazon Kinesis Firehose. which is a service that allows you to easily load streaming data into AWS, and it's available today. So what it allows you to do is you can take any streaming application. It could be a mobile application, it can be a web application, it can be telemetry that's connected to a device, and allows you with a single put API call, the Firehose, to load all of your data into AWS. Initially, you'll be able to choose to load it into S3 or to Redshift or to both. Over time, we'll allow you to load into all of our data stores. And it means that you can start immediately querying the data, loading them into your Hadoop clusters, and starting to get that feel for what's happening end-to-end in your application. The service elastically scales for you. You don't have to worry about provisioning streams. Whatever amount of data, large or small, you send, we will elastically adjust to allow you to send that easily. The service gives you the option of concatenating your data in any time interval you can imagine, or also in different chunk sizes that you want to concatenate. It optionally gives you the ability to compress that data using standard compression methodologies. And it also gives you the option to encrypt that data, which means the data can be encrypted on the way in and then decrypted as the application needs to use that data using the same key, which means you can be sure that the key is stored securely and rotated quite easily whenever you want. So this is a very different way to get streaming data into AWS and into the cloud that I think our customers are going to be very excited about. Now, what about when you have very large amounts of data that you want to move rather quickly to the cloud? This is actually not an easy problem. It's pretty difficult to get large amounts of data from point A to point B. And even for companies who have pretty good connections, let's say a company that has a gigabit per second connection, it's very unlikely that you're going to saturate that whole connection with moving data to AWS. So let's say those companies ascribe 10% of that connection, 100 megabits per second, to moving data to AWS. Still pretty generous. It would take them, with that connection, 100 days to load 100 terabytes into the cloud, which is a really long time. Now, companies can change that if they want to spend a lot of money on their network or on their bandwidth connection, but for most customers, that doesn't really make sense just to load data to the cloud. And it's why a lot of people always say that you should never underestimate the bandwidth of a FedEx truck to get your data from one place to another. And a few years ago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we built a service called Import-Export that allowed customers to move their data via a disk to AWS. And you've seen a lot of the later coming infrastructure providers, rushing to copy this service. But there are some interesting challenges with the service. First of all, you have to buy all the disks yourself. And usually those disks are about 1 terabyte. And so if you wanted to move 100 terabytes, like the example I was citing, you'd have to buy 100 of these disks. Then you'd have to load all the data on there, which is, also takes time, given the way you have to do it. You have to decide whether you're going to encrypt or not. Most companies choose not to encrypt because it's harder for them to do. And then there's a whole bunch of logistics associated with then getting it back to us. You have to ship it, you have to put it in packaging, you got to get a courier, you have to ship it, you have to make sure that you don't make any errors on that address or your data goes to somebody you don't mean to send your data to. And there's just a lot of opportunity for human error. And so we looked at this issue and we said, is there an easier way for our customers to get more data into the cloud more quickly? And we applied some inside-the-box thinking to this and contemplated it. And it's why we're now announcing the launch of Amazon Snowball. And Snowball is a highly secure, shippable storage appliance. The initial Snowballs will be 50 terabytes for you to load data onto. And what it is it's a customized appliance that's 50 terabytes. It's really simple, much simpler than just a disk to load your data into. It allows you to, it encrypts the data end-to-end right from the get-go, so you don't have to worry about encrypting, and you can be sure that your data is encrypted. It has a tamper-proof secure enclosure. You don't have to worry about figuring out how to ship it. The container is very easily to close and ship, and attached to it is a Kindle, which allows you to automatically have a return label that's sent to the right place and that you can automatically track the progress on it being shipped, on it being downloaded into AWS, and then when we're done. So very, very different model. And you can take that same 100 terabytes that you were trying to move to AWS, and instead of it taking 100 days, with 2 snowballs, you can do it inside of a week. That's a very different model in getting your data to the cloud. So to give you a quick demo of how Snowball works and what it looks like, I'd like to bring up the head of AWS Storage Services, Bill Voss.
Well, as more and more customers move their big data loads onto AWS and do big production loads there, they'd like to get huge volumes of data. In fact, one of our customers came to us and said, we want to move 250 petabytes into AWS, but if we fully saturated our network, it'd take 8.5 years. And we want to shut our data center down much faster than that. So as we talked to more customers, we found the big requirements were security, as Andy mentioned, end-to-end encryption, strong tamper protection, those kinds of things. All the encryption is done off the Snowball device, and the keys are managed off the Snowball device. Very fast. You can download a petabyte in as quick as 15 hours, which is a pretty amazing connection. Very simple, not messing with boxes and labels and shipping and all those kinds of things. Very large scale and really inexpensive, about 1/5 the cost of running it over the network. Other more complex requirements are things like strong custody of the data end-to-end, knowing exactly where it is, at every point in time during its transit, and a strong management of that. The ability to operate in places where there's no bandwidth at all, and that's a challenge. A lot of customers have those kinds of requirements. And also, a lot of people have their data stored in legacy file system format, and they want to automatically convert it over to object-based storage so they can use it in more creative and interesting ways. And the Snowball will do that automatically for them as well. And to really do this petabyte, both scale in and out of AWS. So let's take a look at the device. So this is the Snowball device. It's got a hardened case. It'll handle 8.5G impacts, which is pretty impressive. It's a little bit rain and dust resistant as well, in case, I don't know if you ship it to Las Vegas and it floods. Anyway, we didn't expect that, but it's set up for that already. As Andy mentioned, it's got tamper resistance all around the outside. It has its own e-ink label, so it knows where it's going, and it just sets the label for you. Once the Snowball arrives, you simply open up the ports. Your cabling is all up here to hook it up. You hook it up in the back, and the e-ink label turns into a user interface so you can interact with the device. So it's very easy to get it going. So how many people would like to see a 45-pound or 47-pound, 50 terabyte storage server drop 6 feet and smash onto concrete? You guys would like to see that? Okay. So we'll run the video of that. So don't try this at home, and certainly don't try it with your average storage server, unless you've already moved all the data off it. So let's talk a little bit about how it works. So basically, you go to our console, you download a client-side application, and you point it at the data set you want to move. The application will figure out how many snowballs you need and how long it'll take. Then you go to the console and you order your snowballs. In our ingestion center at AWS headquarters, the Snowball will automatically change to your shipping label. It'll notify UPS it needs to be picked up. It'll get picked up, show up on your site. When it arrives there, you simply hook it up like I showed, and then it'll start encrypting and downloading the data. Once it's full, it knows where it needs to go. It'll change its label back to where it needs to go. You close it up, it'll notify UPS, put it back out for shipping. You can watch it every step of the way so you know your data's secure. Once it hits AWS, it'll get downloaded into S3 and decrypted. And there's a hash at either end to ensure that all your data got there securely. And at that point, the Snowball's ready to be reused for another load of data. One of the cool things about snowballs is you can run them in parallel. So just 10 snowballs will give you a 100 gig interface, right? So you can pump that data down really quickly. Now I mentioned that they were pretty inexpensive. So how does $200 per job sound? So a really easy thing to do, order it up and get it delivered. So they're out on the exhibit floor today. You can go touch them and feel them and take a look and start moving big data quickly with Snowball. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. As you can tell, Bill's excited about the product. We all are. I think it will really help customers who want to be moving more amounts of data to AWS to do so much more easily and cost effectively. So the fourth freedom is the freedom from bad database relationships. Now, the cloud has completely changed the relationships between technology providers and customers. Customers have a lot more control, and they can expect to be treated really differently than they've been treated the last 30 years by the old guard technology providers. But I'd tell you that probably the one technology area that's been the slowest to move into this new era of the cloud has been the database space. And it is extremely rare that I meet with an enterprise customer that isn't looking to flee their existing database provider. They just don't feel like they're treated the right way and treated the way that they should be treated in this new era. And that's because when you look at what they are encountering in the old guard database solutions, they're very expensive. They're proprietary with high amounts of lock-in. These providers audit their customers, and if they find them out of compliance in any way, they fine them. Or sometimes they'll negotiate with them to be able to use more of their cloud services. I think our marketing team needs work on redaction. But it's why you see so many companies moving as fast as they can to open source database engines, things like MySQL and Postgres. But if you've tried to do it before, you know that to get the same type of performance is pretty difficult. It takes a lot of work. It's not impossible, but it's hard to do. And it's one of the big reasons why a year ago at reInvent, we announced Amazon Aurora, which is our new database engine that we've been working on for a few years, which gives you the same type of performance as commercial-grade databases, but at the pricing of the open database editions. And so Aurora is fully MySQL compatible. It has up to 5 times better performance than the high-end MySQL implementations. It's at least as durable and as performant as the commercial-grade database solutions, but it's a tenth of the cost of those old guard database solutions. And the service is growing unbelievably fast. And comparing to even a really fast-growing Amazon Redshift, our data warehouse service, Amazon Aurora has just overtaken Redshift as the fastest-growing service in the history of AWS. And you can see that even in just a few months after we've made it generally available, look at some of the customers who are already using Aurora, companies like Expedia and GE and PG&E and NBC Universal. These are the ones I can reference. There are many others I can't reference yet, but there is a huge amount of traction for Aurora because customers very much want that performance of commercial-grade databases at the pricing of open-source databases. And so with the way Aurora has grown, and by the way, I don't have a conversation with a customer these days without the customer bringing up Aurora. And then the second thing they say is, well, what else can you do to give us additional paths to freedom in the database space? And so we've thought about that, and we've been working on some things for you. The first thing is, can we provide more open database options for you? So as you know, we've had MySQL and Postgres and Aurora. And I'm excited to announce now the launch of a sixth database engine and relational database service, MariaDB. MariaDB is fully compatible with MySQL, but what the community is excited about is that they know that the community that's really supporting and keeping MariaDB is really committed to keeping it open. They don't have to worry about that. It's maintained by the creator of MySQL. So this is a pretty significant additional open source database engine for you to use in RDS effective today. The second thing that we can do is help customers who want to move their on-premises databases to AWS. And there's, generally speaking, two macro flavors or patterns. One is customers who want to move the same engine they're running on premises to that same engine in RDS, and customers that want to switch from proprietary database engines to open database engines. And so when you're thinking about trying to do migration, anybody who's done this before knows it's hard. And you have to battle with this really hard decision, which is, do you keep traffic running to the source as you're migrating and have to take care of managing all of the details and making sure you get the data right during the time it's migrating, which if you don't get it exactly right, can have disastrous consequences for your application, and even for your business, depending on your compliance and regulatory regime? Or do you shut off traffic to the source and take downtime for the application? And depending on how large your database is, that can be many hours of downtime, which is also not very attractive. And companies can sometimes get some help with this. They can buy some tools that typically cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you're going to move a few databases, it's not very appealing to pay that type of money. And so we're excited to announce the launch of another new service called the AWS Database Migration Service. And this service allows you to easily migrate production databases to AWS with minimal downtime, and it's available in preview today. And so when you think about how you'd use this service, it allows you to continuously replicate the data from your source to the new target in AWS. You can even, if you choose to, you can even continue to continuously replicate data across your applications outside of migrating, but it makes the continuous replication piece is very simple to migrate. It allows you to do that for a database of any size. You're able to track your progress with real-time monitoring on a GUI. And so it makes the ability, first of all, also it makes it simple to load that data. The database migration tool takes about 10 to 15 minutes to set up, so it's quick. And it means that you can move any like database from on-premises to AWS, and then you can do it much more quickly, as I mentioned, just about 10 minutes to set it up, and much less expensively than you had to do it before. So, for instance, a 1 terabyte database that you wanted to migrate on-premises to AWS using the database migration service is going to cost you about $3. So that is a very different cost and agility model of being able to move your on-premises databases of one engine to the same engine in AWS. What about if you want to migrate from one of the proprietary engines to an open engine in AWS? Now, this is pretty tricky because moving the data itself is often the last mile of the migration, but sometimes, many times, the hardest part is figuring out how to transform the data from one database type to the other database type. It's not simple to do. These are things that take small teams, often 6 to 12 months to do, and they have to do it very carefully. And so we're also excited to tell you about the launch of another new tool for you, which is the AWS Schema Conversion Tool. I'll take that enthusiastic response to mean people are interested in moving from the proprietary databases to the more open databases. And the tool is free of charge. It's available today. It's often what you have to do first when you're going to do a migration. And it allows you to migrate between database engines reliably and easily. And so if you think about the pieces you have to do, It allows you to transform the data from one database type to another. These are things like tables and partitions and sequences. And then it also allows you to copy the data that's stored in the database. And these are things like views and stored procedures and triggers and functions. And it allows you to find the equivalent function in the other database type that you're trying to move to. And in cases where we can't actually find something reliably equivalent, we'll tell you about it, and we'll have links to manual guidance on how to address those things we couldn't do automatically. We think we'll be able to address about 80% of those automatically. And so if you think about it, the combination of the database migration service and the schema conversion tool radically changes the cost structure and the speed with which you can move databases from the old world to this cloud world. So speaking of migration, we were just talking about database migration. I would say that over the last 18 months, many of my conversations with enterprises at some point go something like this. They say, okay, I get the benefits of the cloud. They're very attractive, and I want to move, but I need help moving. I can't do it on my own, and I need best practices, I need trends, I need you to tell me what other enterprises typically do. And when we talk to those enterprises, we say, well, each enterprise is different, and there is no one way they do it. Lots of them get started in lots of different ways. But if I had to pick one norm or set of patterns, it would be something like this, which is usually they move in phases. The first phase is usually dev and test, and altogether new applications. And that makes sense. Dev and test is always the first thing to go in a big shift like the cloud is. And new applications have no dependencies, they have no migration. It's a no-brainer. They get to enjoy all of the benefits of the cloud right from the get-go. The second phase almost immediately follows that first phase, and it almost starts as they're moving their first new application and they realize the success and the advantages of the cloud. And that second phase includes websites, as many, many companies are doing big digital transformations, analytics, for all the reasons we talked about earlier, and mobile, where most companies have employees and customers that are using 3 screens, a laptop, a tablet, and a phone, and they want to be able to access their services across those 3 screens. The next phase, these next 2 are often interchangeable. Different companies do them in different orders. But the next phase then is mission-critical applications, which take more thought and planning because they usually have more dependencies. Or companies who have data center leases that are coming up for renewal or big technology refreshes they'd have to do to be current. And they work with AWS 12 to 24 months in advance to figure out how they can close those data centers and move all of those workloads to AWS. And then the 5th stage, which you're seeing more and more companies do, are companies that are aggressively building 2 to 5 year plans to move all of their applications to AWS. And about a half dozen years ago, Netflix was the first to announce that they were going to do this. And people thought it was a very unusual decision. It was very noteworthy. Today, it's not that unusual a decision anymore. You see more and more companies every month announce that they're moving all into AWS. Not just Netflix. It's companies like Suncorp, who's a large financial services insurance company in Australia, or Intuit last year at reInvent during my keynote announced that they were moving all of their applications to AWS, or FINRA, or Nippon Express. Some of the newer ones are Hertz and Talon Energy. And it's funny, AOL and Time Inc. didn't agree on a lot when they were together, but now that they've split, the one thing they agree on is that they want to be all in on AWS. And so this is happening to a greater and greater extent. And yet, what I would tell you is that we know that there are loads of enterprises that aren't ready to retire their data centers yet for lots of different reasons. And what they really want is they really want to be able to run their on-premises data centers alongside AWS seamlessly. And if you look at the actual results, most of the successful hybrid implementations are being done on top of AWS. And there are lots of examples you can see on the slide. These are all companies successfully doing hybrid on AWS. But I'll give you a couple. that I'll point out. One is Johnson & Johnson. They have 120 applications on top of AWS, and they're planning on tripling that number in the coming year. And they've built tools and capabilities in conjunction with AWS to make their on-premises data centers work with AWS seamlessly. They call that environment the borderless data center. And they've built tools like their XBot tool that allow them to do audits every 10 minutes seamlessly across both environments to see if there are any issues that they want to address and that aren't in compliance. Or you can look at Comcast. They're building their next generation digital broadcasting platform, X1, on top of AWS, have been doing so for a couple years. And again, it's a hybrid application in this case, and they love the fact that as demand goes up and goes down, they can seamlessly scale up or down because of the elasticity that AWS provides them. One of the companies that's making a huge shift from being all on premises to really being hybrid with a significant amount of workloads in AWS is a leader in lots of different industries. And to share with you how they're thinking about their journey to the cloud, it's my pleasure to introduce the CIO of General Electric, Jim Fowler.
Thank you. GE is undergoing one of the largest and frankly most important transformations in our 140-year history. We've moved to starting to combine the physical world of machines with the logical world and the digital world of software to create new outcomes for our customers that are going to change the way they operate their businesses. For example, in our renewables business, where we make wind turbines, we're creating a software-enabled or a software-defined wind farm. This wind farm allows the turbines to individually talk to each other so they can understand how each is operating, to understand the ambient temperature, wind, and weather that is local to that environment, and optimize themselves. And that software-defined wind turbine environment is seeing 10 to 20% improvements in power output through the combination of the physical and the digital world. Inside GE, we're also on this same journey. In our manufacturing plant in Greenville, South Carolina, we're taking the machine data, the information around how the plant operates, and we're combining it with the engineering data around how parts are designed. We're designing a solution that will allow us to reduce the cycle time of new part introduction by 20% by connecting the 3D model that comes off an engineer's desktop and with no manual touch be able to produce that on the manufacturing line and be able to reduce the overall cost of operations and the cost to our customers. This will generate $1 billion of productivity across the General Electric company over the next 5 years. Today, industrials have to become digital to thrive going forward. The reality is that when customers and when companies start to understand that they can take their domain expertise, so within GE, it's our 140 years of experience in creating power, it's our understanding of aircraft engines, it's our understanding of the locomotive market, and combine that with new digital tools, they're able to create outcomes that they were never able to create before. In fact, GE strives to be a world-class leading digital industrial company for the future, and we will generate by the year 2020 $15 billion of our revenue from software. That will make us one of the top 10 software companies in the world. Now, as you can imagine, for a company that is 140 years old, we've got a lot of sins of the past to deal with. Like many of you, I've got 9,000 applications that we use across our business today. We've got over 300 ERPs 2 years ago that were running our business, and too many physical data centers to talk about. And so we've really had to look at what we were going to have to change within our own environment to enable us to become this leading digital industrial in the world. And it started with some simple things, going from bespoke, standalone systems that didn't talk to one another to a real service management view for how we provide services and how we provide transactions to our environment. To rethink the network, 2,000 locations around the world that are network connected. We need to think about the network very differently. Connections aren't going to look like physical locations anymore. They're going to be mobile. We're talking to aircraft that are flying around the world. We're talking to power plants that are in the middle of deserts. So we had to rethink the way we think about network segmentation. We had to take more of a risk-based approach to security and controls. We're dealing with some of the world's most critical infrastructure, and understanding the security and understanding how to take a risk-based approach to that was important. Self-service and automation had to be the mantra with everything that we do, and at the end of the day, financial transparency for our end users was a critical component of how we were going to deliver going forward. And there were three basic things that we fundamentally had to change to be able to get this right. The first is people. Like many of you, over the last 10 years, we outsourced way too much. And so part of it was retooling our own environment. In the last 2 years, we've hired over 2,000 IT professionals, bringing our knowledge capital back into GE, and we've made a $1 billion investment in creating a software center of excellence and design center in San Ramon, California, that will enable us to build high-quality applications and technology. Now, the second element that we had to get right was technology. We're taking a build versus buy mentality for things that matter. Andy, in the keynote at the beginning, brought up, be differentiated on things that matter and things that aren't. And for us, what differentiates us is the software and algorithms that allow us and our customers to run their businesses differently. The things that we're going to choose to buy are the things that don't differentiate us, and for those we're going to have great partners, and that's, frankly, where AWS comes to play. AWS has been working with us for the past 4 years and has become one of our trusted partners. Why? Because I'm not going to sell another aircraft engine because I run a global compute factory very well. I'm not going to sell another locomotive because I figured out how to engineer the user experience really well for my developers. I'm not going to sell another oil and gas pump or pig because I've really figured out how to do self-service and build the different structure features around my infrastructure going forward. That's AWS's differentiator in the environment. That's what they do well, and that's what we feel they do best in class, and that's what's made them a great partner for us going forward. So for us, what this looks like going forward, we're going to migrate over 9,000 workloads into AWS over the next 3 years. We're going to go from having over 9,000 applications to 4,000 applications in our environment. We're going to go from 34 data centers to 4 data centers, and those 4 data centers will only hold what we value most secretly, our secret sauce on things that differentiate us completely in the environment. Everything else is going to go to AWS from our perspective going forward. AWS is our trusted partner that's going to run our company for the next 140 years. But, you know, an example speaks louder than words, and so I thought I would just share with you one really simple example that I think everybody will get, and it comes from our oil and gas business. They've migrated over 50% of their load already into AWS, and one of the applications they've moved is a configurator. This is a quoting tool that our sales teams use mobily in the customer sites to be able to quote for products. In the old world, we would spend about $62,000 to run this application. We would take in about $600,000 in orders. And anytime that we wanted to push a change into this environment, it would take us on average 20 days to move into that environment. After moving to AWS, that same application now runs for $6,000. We're able to deploy code in less than 2 minutes instead of 20 days. And at the end of the day, we had a ton of unintended consequences that were on the good side. Global performance went up. Availability of the application went up. The sales team looked at this as a differentiator for them in being able to quote more tools because the application actually worked better in their environment. So the unintended consequences for us are almost better than the intended consequences of our move to the cloud. So going forward, this is where we're going. We intend to move over 60% of our global workload into AWS. For us, this is no longer an experiment. It's no longer a test. It's no longer something that we talk about being probable. It's inevitable. We're moving, and we're glad to have AWS as our partner. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jim. It is really an honor for us to be partnering with GE as they're making their journey to the cloud and as they're really evolving how they run their infrastructure. We've learned a lot, and we're really pleased and excited about having the chance to learn more moving forward. Now, it's pretty amazing what GE is doing, as you heard Jim just talk about, and yet I would tell you that there are lots and lots of enterprises that don't have the capability internally to make this type of migration that GE is doing. And so you may have noticed that I brought a friend on the stage when I came up. That friend is Omar Abash, who's the Chief Strategy Officer of Accenture, and he's here to share an exciting new announcement with you.
Andy, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, good morning to you and all your friends here. So as Andy just said, I'm totally delighted to be able to announce today the formation of a brand new Accenture AWS business group, which clearly is a very serious commitment by both of our companies to the cloud services space. So the first question is why? And my answer is simple. Firstly, it's better for our clients. This capability will allow us to enable a range of as-a-service business models for our customers so that they can get their business and IT services directly from the cloud on a consumption basis. And secondly, because we believe, and I know that you all here believe truly, that the cloud is ready for prime time in the enterprise. Why? Well, our customers are telling us. Also, we've been working with AWS for nearly a decade, so learning as we go. And finally, we have 18,000 people already working in the cloud technology space right now. And so this means that Accenture has a cloud-first approach to how we help our clients jump into the range of what we believe are truly the future of the new technologies. So in terms of what we're doing here, we're pooling together the resources of the winner in the cloud technology space with a leading player in technology services globally to put together a kind of cloud Sherpas for AWS. So what do I mean? I mean a set of capabilities and offerings that were born in the cloud. Today, our enterprise customers have got billions of dollars locked up in their traditional IT, and the Accenture AWS Business Group will allow us to help them twofold. Firstly, in navigating the migration of their applications to the cloud, as well as setting up new processes and applications in the cloud. And secondly, in terms of solving very complex big data problems in industry-specific domains using the Accenture Insight platform running on AWS. So clearly this means that we're making a very considerable investment over a multi-year period, beginning within our first year, training an incremental 1,000 people on automation, methodologies, and technologies in this new cloud environment. And also, we will certify 500 of them on AWS to make sure that we can help support our clients in the journey of bringing the full power of the innovation of the cloud into the enterprise. So clearly today is just the first step. I'm totally stoked about it, very excited. We're going to be listening to our customers very carefully over the coming period to learn, but you can expect that beyond cloud migration and big data analytics, we'll be bringing a range of other services in this space to our customers, including IoT, security, and other enterprise-relevant areas. So with that said, thank you ever so much for having us along, Andy. Very excited. And for all of you, enjoy the rest of reInvent.
Thank you. Thank you, Omar. We are really excited about the partnership with Accenture, and enterprises, we're taking all comers now, so giddy up. So this is a picture of my 14-year-old daughter, who's going on 25, sitting on the staircase in our house on Saturday night, waiting with some friends for the pizza delivery man. And she had just informed me that she was going to be taking a walk outside for about an hour in our neighborhood. And we live in Seattle, we live in the city, and the neighborhood is fine, but it's not really the type of neighborhood you want your 14-year-old walking around by themselves. And so as I conferred with my wife in real time, I was lamenting the fact that I had to make this decision between being the popular dad and saying, sure, go ahead, even though it was against my better judgment, or being the naggy, naysaying dad and saying, you can't do that. And as I was having this conversation, it occurred to me that CIOs have had to make the same types of decisions over the last number of years before the cloud, and whether they let their builders move quickly like they want to, or to make them slow down to make sure that they're secure. And the thing that is great about the cloud, one of the additional freedoms, the sixth freedom in this case, is that you don't have to make that decision any longer between moving fast or being secure in the cloud. You get the freedom to secure your cake and eat it too. And that's because over the last number of years, AWS has built a series of services and certifications that you guys have told us matters and allows you to run your most important applications on top of our platform. So we have certifications that range from SOC 1 and SOC 2 and SOC 3 and ISO 27001 and ISO 9001. You can be HIPAA compliant on the platform. You can be PCI compliant on the platform. We have all kinds of government certifications, FedRAMP and FISMA and ITAR. We also, our newest certification is Rule 17a-4, which is an SEC certification that allows financial services companies to store their sensitive data and financial records in our backup and archival service, Glacier. But we've also built a number of services where we have a lot more security capabilities than any other provider by a pretty large amount. So we have something called VPC, a virtual private cloud, that effectively allows you to cordon off a portion of our network, deploy resources into it, and then you can set up subnets that are addressable either through IP addresses that you bring to bear or the internet, your choice, and then connects to your data center topology via VPN, so it really becomes an extension of your data center footprint. We launched just yesterday our web application firewall, or our WAF, which allow you to protect against attacks like SQL injection or cross-site scripting. It also lets you set your own filters. We have a number of ways that you can encrypt, as I talked about earlier. We have lots of identity capabilities for you, both fine-grained identity and access management, as well as Active Directory and SAML, if you use SAML. And then a number of compliance services that we've really announced over the last couple of years here at reInvent. And so last year we announced a service catalog that allows systems administrators to pick the patterns or templates that they want their employees to be able to deploy to AWS. CloudTrail, which we announced a couple years ago, which is an amazing success in terms of how many customers are using it, which is really an API log of every API call made, who made it, where it came from, what resources it tried to impact, which resources it did impact. And then AWS Config, which we announced last year at reInvent. And what Config is, it's a way to see all of your AWS resources, all of their relationships and dependencies, and the configuration of those resources. And if any of the configurations change, you can know about it, either by looking at the GUI dashboard or by signing up to be notified. You can sign up to a live stream of any notifications. And yet, a lot of our customers using Config, and Config is another one of those services. It's one of the biggest surprises to us over the last year, how many are using it. A lot of our customers say, look, there are certain rules I'd like to set on my configuration where if those rules aren't being met, I want to know about them immediately and I want to take action on them. And so we're pleased to announce a new capability in AWS Config today in preview, which is called AWS Config Rules. And what Config Rules allows you to do is it allows you to set up compliance rules for your resource configurations, and then it triggers action, a notification and action if it turns out those rules aren't being met. So how can you use something like this? Let's take an example. Let's say that you know in your organization that any EBS volume that's going to be launched, you want it to be encrypted. And if it's not encrypted, you want to know about it. And so what customers will do, typically they're going to encrypt the volumes, but we find that we have some customers who just want to know that the rule is not being met, and they're going to assign a team to manually figure out what they want to do. There are some customers who just want to do simple scripting that they can do through Java or JavaScript via our Lambda service to encrypt the volume. And there are some customers who say, anytime a volume's launched unencrypted, go ahead and automatically encrypt it. And we'll provide customers with the capability to do all those over time. Another example, let's say that you know that you want all of your instances that are going to be launched inside of VPC. If it's not done, you can make sure that you terminate the instances. Another example, let's say that you want to make sure, you want to set a rule that says all instances launched in your organization have to be tagged so we know what they're doing. Some enthusiasm for tagging. And people want to know if they're production instances or dev and test instances, et cetera. This will allow you to set that rule. And again, you can choose the action. It could be to page the developer. It can be to terminate the instance. Whatever you choose to do, you can now do these things through config rules. And you can check on the status of which rules are being complied with and which aren't through a dashboard that will show you via colors what the status is. We've pre-built for you a number of rules that you can use, and these are based on what we hear most frequently requested by our customers. But you also can choose to create your own custom rules, and you can create those with Lambda, and you can figure out how you want to take action with Lambda as well. What about when you actually want to take action before you actually have an issue? So people say, I love AWS config. It's a really important guardrail that I can put up. And I can set rules now, which is going to make it even easier to make sure that I don't end up out of the configuration I want. But still, it's taking action after something's actually happened. And we have a pretty big environment inside of Amazon and inside of AWS, and we have to do lots of assessments and lots of evaluations of potential weaknesses or vulnerabilities. And our customers often ask us if we would be able to run those same assessments on their applications. And because we have over 1 million active customers, it doesn't really scale to have our team run those manually on top of each of their assessments. But we thought about really what customers wanted, and we decided that we'd build a service out of it. And so I'd like to share with you the announcement of the preview of another new service called Amazon Inspector. An Inspector is an automated security assessment service that finds security or compliance issues with deploying applications on AWS. And the way it works is we look at any of the potential impacted networks that you're looking at, your OS or your attached storage. We have a common set of vulnerabilities that we will run on top of your platform based on the best practices in our experience of doing these types of assessments over the last really 20 years at Amazon, but 9.5 years of AWS. You can also apply more specific regimes like PCI rules that we'll do assessments on. And then what we'll provide to you is a detailed report of where there might be weaknesses or where there may be vulnerabilities, and then advice and guidance on how you should remediate those. And then all that information is collected and stored in CloudTrail so that you can tell which assessments were done, what findings did they have, and then what you actually did to remediate so your auditors can have visibility to all of that. So I think that when you look at the collection of certifications and security capabilities and some of the new capabilities we just announced with config rules and inspector, one of the nice things about the cloud, which becomes increasingly so every day, is that you don't have to make that choice between can I move fast or can I stay secure. It moves from an or to an and. And that's been true for a long period of time. But as we keep adding more and more capability, what most customers are realizing is that their security posture actually improves in the cloud versus what it was on premises. Now, a customer of ours that knows a lot about security and has to worry about security, given the nature of what they've produced, is a company that's built their entire business on top of AWS. It's a really innovative payment platform called Stripe. And to share with you how they think about their platform and their move on AWS and activity on AWS and security, it's my pleasure to bring to the stage Jorge Ortiz, the manager of operations at Stripe.
Thank you, Andy. It's good to be here, and I hope you're all having a great time at reInvent. I'm here to talk to you about Stripe and about how AWS has been critical to making Stripe successful. If you're not familiar with us, Stripe makes it easier than it's ever been before for developers to integrate payments into their websites and mobile applications. If you've ever tried to integrate payments yourself, you know how painful and time-consuming it can be to integrate with a financial system, ensure the security of your infrastructure, and meet your compliance obligations. Stripe solves these problems so that you don't have to. With just a few lines of code, you can build payments into your website or your mobile app and let us take care of the rest. Today, hundreds of thousands of companies use Stripe to process billions of dollars in payments per year. Everything from the smallest two-person startup to the largest, most sophisticated internet companies. We were once a small two-person company, and we decided to build our infrastructure on AWS. I want to talk to you about the three most valuable things that we've gotten from that decision. AWS has given us world-class infrastructure, has scaled seamlessly with our growth, and most importantly, has allowed our developers to be as productive as they can be. The first thing I want to talk about is access to world-class infrastructure. AWS operates at a scale and level of sophistication that we could never hope to reach on our own. Not only do they give us access to data centers around the world, but they also build infrastructure services that we couldn't hope of building ourselves. To get the security guarantees that we want for our infrastructure, the most important of these services was VPC. Now, if you've ever gone through a compliance audit, you know that it's not a walk in the park. I probably shouldn't tell you this story, but one time we were going through an audit, and one of our auditors was literally digging through our dumpster to see if there were any, if we were improperly disposing of any sensitive information. Thankfully, building on AWS's infrastructure lets us rely on their security and their own compliance for the physical and network layers, so that our compliance story is significantly easier. In turn, this lets us securely vault credit cards for our own customers so that they can reduce their own compliance obligations to a minimum. Stripe has been on AWS from the day we launched. We recently celebrated our 4th birthday, and we took a look back at our last 4 years of growth. And as we were sort of going through it, each year of growth was more terrifying than the year before. Fortunately, AWS was with us every step of the way. They were able to scale seamlessly with our growth so that we didn't have to worry about our infrastructure as we grew over the last 4 years. And we're not worried about our growth over the next 4 years on AWS. But by far the most important thing that AWS has been able to do for us is let our developers be as productive as they can be. As a developer-focused company, we believe very strongly that if you empower developers, they will do great things. AWS has empowered us to take tasks that would have been manual and time-consuming and automate them away. Today, we can rebuild entire fleets of databases onto new hardware with the push of a button. The infrastructure that is possible for us today would have been unthinkable for us without AWS. And this is the same philosophy behind Stripe's own product. We believe that charging a credit card should be as easy as spinning up a new AWS instance. With just a few lines of code, you can get started accepting payments for your product or business. Fundamentally, what AWS has been able to do for us is solve infrastructure challenges so that we don't have to worry about them. And that is what we want to be able to do for our customers, is solve their payments infrastructure challenges so that they can focus on the challenges unique to their own products. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jorge. It is super neat what Stripe is doing on top of the platform and the industry that they're disrupting as we speak. So the last freedom I'll talk about is the freedom to say yes. You know, as companies get larger, what you often find is they get more conservative and you have the leadership teams of these companies walking into meetings on new ideas, really looking to say no. Now, sometimes that may be because they're risk adverse. A lot of times it's because they don't have the infrastructure and the agility to say yes to a lot of simultaneous projects. They have to make a lot of or decisions. And it's actually one of the things I like most about working at Amazon, which is it's a company that not only has an infrastructure because it uses AWS, we're going to say yes to new ideas, but because we say yes to so many new ideas, it means that innovative people like to work at the company and spend some of their shower cycles thinking about ways to invent on behalf of our business. Now, you've seen startups doing this from the very beginning because they don't have a business unless they're saying yes and inventing. And just look at what a company like Airbnb has done in the hotel space, or look at what Stripe is doing in the payment space, or look at what Slack has done in the group messaging space, or Tinder in the matchmaking space. These are areas where they have innovated industries that have been kind of stayed for a long period of time. And enterprises have figured out that they actually need to move quickly too, or they're going to be left behind. And there are lots of examples of this. You see some on this slide, but a couple I'll point out is you can look at Singapore Post, which is the largest carrier in Asia Pacific. They built a brand new business from scratch, an e-commerce business, in just 3 months on top of AWS, at 50% less than it would have cost if they'd done it on premises, and it's now roughly 30% of their total revenue, and they've been around for a really long time. Or look at Qantas Airlines. They had an idea that they could build a hotel booking application and website, and if they had to rely on waiting for the old way of doing it, it would have taken years to do. They would have said no every year. But because of AWS and the cloud, it allowed them to say yes. And they were able to build it in a couple months. The performance, the pages load about 25% faster, and they're able to handle huge spikes in traffic. And it really changed the nature of what they could do as a business because they had that capability of the cloud. My last guest to the stage is a company that had an incredible opportunity in front of them. And this is a type of opportunity that can really change the relevance and scope of their business forever. And in the old days, it would have cost them hundreds of millions of dollars to try and do this, and the answer likely would have been no. And so, to tell you the story of how they've been able to say yes, please welcome to the stage the CTO and Senior Vice President of Major League Baseball Advanced Media, Joe Inzerillo.
Morning. So, for those of you who may have seen the keynote last year, I came up and I talked to you about a product technology that we call StatCast. StatCast is the collection of all the things that are happening on the baseball field, whether it's the players, the umpires, the ball, the runners, and how do we actually collect all that data and tell a narrative about the game. Now, we're a year later, and so what was in pilot is now common. We're deployed to all 30 ballparks. We've got over 130,000 plays in this system. And it's not just about video, it's also about stats. And so for the first time, we actually have leaderboards of things like exit velocity and hardest hit home run. One of the things that didn't quite work out so well, though, is really the fastest velocity pitching. So for those of you unfamiliar, there's a closer for Cincinnati who throws really hard, a man named Chapman. And when we graphed it, he just kind of has the whole thing. So we had to build what I think is the coolest feature that we built this year, the Chapman filter. So you click that button, and it actually takes all of his stuff out, so you can actually see other people in the league that throw really hard. But I want to show you a little bit about what we're doing on television. So how did this get worked into the narrative of television, and how are our fans reacting to it? I think when you see some of this stuff, it's really cool where we've gotten in just a year.
This really does show the strength of Jassie's arm in right field. Carlos has good speed, go right on the money, and he barely beats it.
Kevin Kiermaier strikes again with his 15th assist of the year, and he prevents the potential tying run from scoring. Realmuto out upon arrival at the plate, courtesy of Kevin Kiermaier.
A home run for Mike Trout.
16 miles an hour. Launch angle, max height. Quite different than the earlier home run with 99 miles an hour, much higher.
So, thank you. So that's just that's a little sampling of television. For those of you who are baseball fans, you may recognize the at-bat interface. This is on tablets and web, etc. But what's it going to look like next year? Well, here's an idea of what we're talking about doing, is really taking the fan into the 3D space using that StatCast data. Basically giving them a simulation of what's going on in the game, seeing things like exit velocity, launch angle in real time, seeing reaction time and route efficiency of a player for every play, and then seeing what that player does with the ball, the reaction time to throw, the transfer time we call it, what the runner's doing. Is they running efficient? Are they hitting 19.6 miles an hour? And in this case, being out, because that was a heck of a throw from the outfield. That's one side of it. We're also thinking about how can we do even cooler things. And so the thing I'm going to show you now is, again, one of the most exciting things I think we've worked on, which is next generation imaging. So here's a typical throwback to first, shot with regular cameras. But what happens if we change the game? What happens if we start to collect three-dimensional camera data and then allow the camera to pivot around the action? We can now see, did he slide to the outside of the bag? Was Pujols' leg on the base? Who knows? Now we do. Because however many cameras you have on a baseball field, it will never be enough until you can do something like this and simulate it after the action. Being able to pause at the instant that a play is made here has ramifications from entertainment to officiating that we're really excited about. And just imagine what this is going to look like in future years. So we hope we're going to be testing this right now. We hope we're going to roll it out soon, maybe as soon as next season. But I think it gives you an idea of where our head's at. But I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about OTT, over-the-top streaming service. So for those of you unfamiliar, it's the stuff where you buy a subscription on the internet, delivered over the internet, that's not tethered to your cable subscription. And so we've been doing this for a long time for ourselves. Thank you. So we've been doing this for a long time for ourselves. So MLB.TV is the MLB product that's over 12 years old. And at this point in time, we have over 1 million subscribers. We also do about 2,500 games per season, and you have home and away feeds and all sorts of other things. And at this point, we've gotten to over 1,000 devices. And so as we've done that, we've had other folks that have sort of asked, okay, can you do this for us? And so one of the big ones that we did last year was WWE Network. So for the wrestling fans out there, that platform is something that we helped them build. But this has been a busy year, I have to say, since the last time I was on stage. So adding to that and our other clients, we helped launch PlayStation Vue. So Sony's over-the-top cable subscription is powered by MLBAM. We also launched HBO Now. So HBO Now's over-the-top streaming service is powered by MLBAM. And most recently, we launched PGA Tour for the golf fans out there. So a lot to do, and the agility that Andy spoke about, the ability to move fast, the ability to say yes, the ability to get these things deployed is key to our success. So what are we going to do in 2016? Well, I bet you we're going to do a lot of things, but I can tell you one thing that we are definitely going to do, which I think is unprecedented and exciting, which is MLBAM has reached an arrangement with the NHL. And so, thank you. So starting with tonight's game, season opener in the NHL games, and progressing all throughout the season, sort of culminating into a relaunch of consumer product in January, MLB and the NHL are collaborating on how to deliver the best of sports to their fans. And we couldn't be more excited about this. The NHL is a fantastic partner, and we really think a lot of the stuff we do in baseball is going to be welcomed by their fans. This hasn't really gone unnoticed by some other folks. So the media has really talked about this a lot and said, well, what's the future for us? Like, what are we going to do as MLBAM? Are we going to continue as this entity, or are we going to potentially spin off a technology company? And so we are well down that path of spinning out a technology company. And while I don't know who the investors are going to be, and I don't know exactly how it's going to go, I can tell you one thing assuredly, is it will be powered by AWS. When we think of Amazon and we think of what we need to do, we're going to be building on the core services that we've already enjoyed from Amazon with our services on top of it, our platform as a service. And so things like user services, analytics, content management are already out there. But we're working on the next generation of stuff as well. Media pipeline, transcode, media delivery. These things that we are layering on top of the core services at AWS to make a value proposition that's compelling to our customers. And that's really what it's all about, is the service of the fan and the service of the customer, and the partnership that we've enjoyed with AWS to make all of that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody that doesn't think MLBAM is one of the most sophisticated technology providers on this planet is not paying attention. They are totally changing the way we watch baseball. And as a viewer, I'm very appreciative. So, as I closed the keynote, I thought that there was an interesting set of quotes from a customer of ours, the CTO of Ticketmaster, Jody Mulkey, that I thought captured the essence of what we've been talking about. And Ticketmaster is another one of those enterprises that's making an all-in move to AWS. And what Jody said was, he said, AWS APIs have never said, come back when you have a smarter question. AWS APIs have never said, get off my floor. And as he's looked at how his employees are using AWS, he said, you get these folks who've put their blood, sweat, and tears into making our consumer experience grow. It's incredibly liberating for them, and they feel empowered, and they feel like it's their site. For the first time, I heard one of the engineers say, this is my website. And it's so amazing what happens when they actually feel empowered like it's their own. And that is the essence of what we're talking about here. We all come to work to be useful, to have impact, to feel like we're making a difference. We don't want to be order takers. Many of us have ideas that we think could improve the business or be better for customers. And there's nothing more inspiring than being able to try some of those ideas and have the freedom to see if you are right. And if you weren't, to have the freedom to try and adjust and see if you can make it right. People want to control their own destiny. It's what keeps them engaged in our companies and in our customers' problems, even when they're not at work. And that is really what's at the heart of this movement to AWS and the cloud. You have an incredible opportunity over the next few days to learn from 19,000 of your peers, to learn about how you can change your business, and you have an incredible opportunity to forever change the trajectory of your product and your business. I really hope you take advantage of it. We'll be there every step of the way to help however we can. Enjoy the next 3 days, and thank you very much.